So speaking of voter fraud, I want to pull up a clip of Donald Trump's Minister of Truth on it's a combination of all of his clips from the Sunday shows, because there's this belief. It's almost a religious belief at this point that voter fraud is happening on such a large scale that it warrants the most draconian policies imaginable. And I don't only want to talk about the substance of the claim and the lie and the falsehood of the lie that he gave over and over again on yesterday, but I actually want to talk about the individual, because you can't possibly watch or listen to this clip without identifying that this guy, Stephen Miller, has some serious problems. And because he's such a high-ranking official, or he's so close to Trump, it's probably more accurate, it's a problem that all of us now have. Let's listen to this clip. It's a little long, but let's listen.
Do you feel like you and your staff there that you're in control of events at the White House?
I think to say that we're in control would be a substantial understatement. We have equal branches of government in this country. The judiciary is not supreme. There's no such thing as judicial supremacy. What the judges did, both at the ninth and at the district level, was to take power for themselves that belonged squarely in the hands of the President of the United States.
Stephen, the three judges say you're flat wrong.
No, the three judges made a broad, overreaching statement. This is an ideological disagreement between those who believe we should have borders and should have controls, and those who believe there should be no borders and no controls. This is a judicial usurpation of power. The end result of this, though, is that our opponents, the media, and the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned. And the bottom line is the president's powers in this area represent the apex of executive authority. We will have unquestioned military strength beyond anything anybody can imagine. We have a president who has done more in 3 weeks than most presidents have done in an entire administration. Saying that we stand with our ally, having the two men appear on camera worldwide to all of planet Earth, was a statement that will be understood very well by North Korea.
All of planet
I'm not
Earth.
going to make a comment on that. I don't have any information on it. I do want to say that Sean Spicer, as always, is 100% correct, and that what he said is true and important, and I agree with it.
So then you are making a comment on it.
I'm not going to make any new comment. It is a fact, and you will not deny it.
Well, I won't.
There are massive numbers of non-citizens in this country who are registered to vote. That is a scandal. We should stop the presses. That's the story we should be talking about. And I'm prepared to go on any show, anywhere, anytime, and repeat it and say the President of the United States is correct 100%.
Bruh, this dude has issues. Like, he has very deep-seated issues. The matchup that you just watched was a segment from Morning Joe, and even Morning Joe and Mika Brzezinski, like, they, not that they're the measuring bar, but this guy, Stephen Miller, who is an assistant to the president, who has the ear of the president, and who has the unwavering support of the president, has some deep emotional issues, as well as ideological issues, philosophical and political issues, because the president of the United States is not above reproach. He is not unquestionable. That's not how our government works. That's not how any of this works. In fact, everything that he said there was almost 100% wrong. Not only in terms of the context, not only politically and ideologically, but it was also wrong substantively. He's outright lied in several components, several segments. And we're getting to this weird place where, we have arrived. We have fully arrived in this place where truth does not matter. Verifiable truth. We're not talking about these lofty philosophical truths where maybe it's half full, maybe it's half empty. No, we're talking about really tangible, practical truths that you can count on one hand. We're getting to the point where that doesn't matter because they say it so confidently and they say it with so much arrogance, and they have a devoted following of sycophants who believe them no matter what. So, of course, it's easy for Stephen Miller to get away with this because he has hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of right-leaning conservative Tea Partiers, idiots, because that's all you can call them at this point. when he has the support of a large swath of America who believes these lies. They believe it like a religion. They believe this more than they believe in Jesus. They believe voter fraud is, they believe people are busing illegal immigrants from precinct to precinct. And this is how Donald Trump justifies losing New Hampshire. Before I go any further about Stephen Miller, his background, who he is, and his problems, I want you to understand that these people are coming out pandering to the ego of Donald Trump. This isn't about this. This has nothing to do with actual voter fraud or what's really their election fraud. It has everything to do with Donald Trump can't imagine that he actually lost. Not only imagine, he can't accept the fact that he lost the popular vote. So he's willing to spread propaganda and outright lies, which will result in actual policies that will lead to the suppression of the vote, particularly of minorities. He's willing to do this and to send out his minister of truth, it was Sean Spicer, but I guess Sean Spicer got to the point where he couldn't keep telling this lie, so he brought out Junior, Stephen Miller, and so he rolls these people out to start these national conversations, to create the feedback loop, to create the self-fulfilling prophecy. And not even the self-fulfilling prophecy, is straight out a feedback loop where they say something, the people believe it, and because the people believe it, they continue to say it. All because of Donald Trump's ego. He can't believe that he lost New Hampshire. He can't believe that he can't accept. He can't allow it to exist in the atmosphere that he lost the popular vote. So this is what Stephen Miller came out to do. And anyone who is remotely connected to reality and has any connection to what the world actually could be and what the world has been at previous times, you see this approach. You see this bulldogged approach where they're trying to steamroll their arrogance and their propaganda and their lies. They're trying to make it truth by force. And they're trying to intimidate people. And Junior, I keep calling him Junior because he's legit. He's like 31 years old. You know, he doesn't realize that he stepped into a grown man's game. There's nobody. He's not impressing anybody but the people who already believed him. But so a couple of things, a little bit about him. So this guy, Stephen Miller, is from Santa Monica, California. I believe he went to Santa Monica High School, the huge high school with like 4,300 people, students. With that many students, of course, people remember him. He's very young, so a lot of people remember him. I'm going to share a couple of tweets from people who remembered him. But he also went to Duke, and while he was at Duke, he had a relationship, a bromance, I guess, with a newly famed white nationalist, and we'll discuss that. But before we get there, here are his two major claims. His two major claims in this nice little mashup that we just watched were that 14% of non-citizens, and this is what he said in the full statement. He said, quote, "A study shows that 14% of non-citizens, according to academic research, at a minimum are registered to vote, which is an astonishing statistic." Now, this is his claim, and this was quickly debunked by a guy named Rex Hupke in the Chicago Times. And this claim that he has is based on research, but the researchers themselves say that these are numbers that the right and the Republican Party in America have intentionally used to forward their agenda. And actually from the Chicago Times, it reads, it says, quote, "The researcher in the study that Miller cites actually stated that on the right, there has been a tendency to misread our results as proof of massive voter fraud, which in their eyes, they don't believe exists." The researcher that this guy quotes to try to make us have this overwhelming fear that 14% of non-citizens are voting. In actuality, they're saying that 14% of non-citizens are registered to vote, but the people who did the research themselves concluded that they are not voting, that it is not actual voter fraud. And it could be compared to the case that we just got through talking about of the individual from Texas who was registered to vote, kept trying to register to vote as a resident, as a legal resident, but not yet a citizen. Either way it goes, they are not actually voting. And the researcher himself debunked his claim. The second claim that Stephen Miller put out, he said that people are busing voters from neighborhood to neighborhood, from neighboring states into New Hampshire, and that's why Trump lost. And it's also why Kelly Ayotte, who was running for state office in New Hampshire, that's why she lost. He said that, quote, there's a very real, very serious problem. And I want to pull up a tweet here because I want to pull up a tweet from an individual who actually works in the system there in New Hampshire, a Republican, Tom Rath, the former Republican Attorney General of New Hampshire. This is what he said. He said, "Let me be unequivocal as possible. Allegations of voter fraud in New Hampshire are baseless, without any merit, and it's shameful to spread these fantasies." But we knew that already. I didn't have to actually go over that because we all know, if you've been paying attention, that between 2000 and 2014, over 1 billion ballots were counted and checked and cast. And out of all of those instances, out of 1 billion ballots, they found 31 or 35 instances of voter fraud. You stand a greater chance of getting struck by lightning. You have a better chance of crashing in an airplane. I don't know why I just use that as an example, as much as I hate flying, but you have a better chance than you would finding examples of voter fraud, especially large scale. We're talking about millions. They're saying up to 3 million people voted illegally and nobody noticed. And so because nobody noticed, here comes Donald Trump and his Ministry of Truth to find out what's happening. All right. So substantively, he's completely bereft of anything. He's completely lying. He's being Donald Trump's lead propagandist because Sean Spicer, I guess, just couldn't stomach forwarding this lie anymore. So you have to ask yourself the question, what type of person can get up here and not only spout this level of lie or lies, plural, but also do it with this. I mean, this dude is straight out of, 1984 is the one we always go back to, but this guy is straight out of he is a caricature of what a propagandist would be in a book like 1984. He is a caricature of what you would think a propagandist would be. He's exactly the type of tone, tenor, and demeanor of this type of sociopath. So a couple of people who know him saw him on TV and said, you know what? Let me explain the type of person that Stephen Miller is. So this is from a guy, and I'll pull it on your screen and I'll read it to you. This is a guy from Charles Gould on Twitter at @MiddleKidGould. He said, at a school of 4,300 students, he was hands down the most unliked person on campus. Speaking of Stephen Miller, whenever I was feeling unpopular or nerdy, I would just think, at least I'm not Stephen Miller. And I would immediately feel better. This is good shit. It's hilarious. He said he developed way too fast. And this is why he looks like he's 50 years old today, but he's only 31. He had a full blah, blah, blah. Okay, I don't really care about this one. But the last line here was, no, I'm not even going to read the last line. You could see it on the screen. All right, the third one is actually the one that's important. Number 3, and this is by Charles Gould on Twitter. You can go find it yourself at @MiddleKidGould. He said he was an unabashed racist. No, I'm not being oversensitive. And no, I'm not using the R word here where it doesn't apply. In private conversations, he was constantly making disparaging remarks about the African American, Latino, and Asian students at our school. All right. The last one. This is the one. If you want to know who Stephen Miller and the rest of them are, this is the one. He thrives on people not liking him. At a certain point in his life, he realized he would just be an insignificant little shit unless he was able to piss people off. While giving a speech on why while giving a speech on why he should be the school's president, he was booed off stage by 4,300 people when he said, "Why do we have to clean up after ourselves when we pay janitors to do that?" I saw him later that day, and he talked about how well he thought the speech had gone. Yeah, this is the type of mentality. This is the only reason, and I really argued with myself. I said, do I want to read this guy's, high school recollection of Stephen Miller? Do I really want to read that, or is it just, kind of, TMZ shit? But when you watch the video and you watch his demeanor and you watch his approach and you watch his casual dismissal of the Constitution, you watch his casual dismissal of any just decency and decorum and respect for the truth, and unashamedly takes these talking points, which are glaring lies, and he shoves it down the throat, or attempts to shove it down the throat of the media. You have to consider where he comes from. When you see those things, you realize Charles Gould's account of him is not too far off. And this is who Donald Trump is surrounding himself with. And if you extrapolate from that, you really can understand all of the alt-right that surrounds Donald Trump. All of the people who are so in love with the fact that Donald Trump is here to allow them to be as disgusting of human beings as they can, and to get successful, because this insignificant little shit, as Charles Gould identified him as, now is in the White House. And now he has the ability and the power to carry out his agenda and to carry out his grudge. I mean, this kid has a grudge. He's got something to prove, and he's trying to prove it on the backs of the United States of America, of Americans. But there's another part of this guy, and maybe I'm not being too hard. He stepped out here. This is his role. This is what he wants. He wants the attention, so let's give him the attention. This guy is also connected to white supremacist, white nationalist, neo-Nazi Richard Spencer. According to Mother Jones, who did a lengthy profile on Richard Spencer, the two of these kids got along really well, quite swimmingly, while they were at Duke University together. And I want to pull it up on your screen for you so that you can see it for yourself. This is according to Mother Jones. Spencer was more explicit about his views on race and immigration with members of the Duke Conservative Union, where he says he clicked with a columnist for the campus newspaper and fellow DCU member named Stephen Miller. Miller, who would earn acclaim for standing up for white lacrosse players falsely accused of gang rape by a black woman, is now a senior advisor to the Trump administration. It continues. Spencer also defended the Duke lacrosse players, writing about the case for the American Conservative, but that's not the only reason he and Miller hit it off. Spencer says Miller helped him with fundraising and promotion for an on-campus debate on immigration policy that Spencer organized. Skip a few lines. Another former member of the DCU confirmed that Miller and Spencer worked together at the event at DCU. According to a past president for the group, Miller denounced multiculturalism and expressed concerns that immigrants from non-European countries were not assimilating. A little bit more about the man who works with President Trump. Spencer said, "It's funny that no one's picked up on the Stephen Miller connection. I knew him very well when I was at Duke, but I'm kind of glad that no one's talked about it because I don't want him to harm Trump." When you put the pieces of the puzzle together, you can understand why Donald Trump loves this guy, loves him so much that, he sent out, of course, Donald Trump sent out a tweet supporting him, saying, "Congratulations, Stephen Miller, on representing me this morning on the various Sunday morning shows. Great job." Donald Trump has surrounded himself with fellow men children. people who have been, who were the losers on their campus, in their school, people who only found, the only way they found to survive the fact that they were losers was by intentionally being the person that everyone hated, by getting a kick out of it. And this is exactly what the alt-right community is. This is exactly what 4chan is about. It's about people who are losers for whatever reason. I mean, everyone can't be, but finding a community amongst themselves and getting joy out of being the hated. And that's fine. That's the psychological profile of them. Put that aside. Now this cat is in the White House, and he has no qualm whatsoever with pandering lies, peddling lies, and forwarding propaganda. That's Stephen Miller, the Minister of Truth, America's Minister of Truth.